This may be some minutes later, or maybe right on time. If you're lying in bed right now, tired of scrolling through your phone or counting ceiling cracks, you're in the right place. Welcome to History for Sleep, where your dreams are gently tucked in between the pages of the past. Tonight, we journey far back to a time when hygiene was more of an idea than a practice. When getting your dinner might mean catching a rat or being caught by one. When daily life didn't just have drama, but mud, plague, and enough smells to cancel your appetite till next week. Yep, we're diving into 10 brutal facts about daily life in the Middle Ages. But don't worry, we'll wrap them up in soft storytelling, humor, and calming narration. Think of it as a bedtime story, just with more leeches. So breathe in, breathe out, pull those covers up, and let your mind wander, not to dragons or knights just yet, but to the muddy roads, smoky kitchens, and very questionable toilet situations of medieval Europe. And remember, the worse their lives sound, the better your mattress will feel. Fact 1. Bathing was rare and suspicious. Picture this. It's a sunny afternoon in a 14th century village. Birds chirp, sheep bleat. Somewhere in the distance, a man is yelling about turnips. You, brave time traveler, are walking into town. You smell something earthy, musty, like wet dog, wearing socks. But it's not just one person, it's everyone. In the Middle Ages, people didn't bathe regularly. In fact, bathing too much was considered suspicious. If someone smelled too clean, people might think they were hiding something. Maybe a disease. Or worse, French. Public bathhouses existed in the early part of the era, sure. But once the Black Death hit, those fell out of fashion faster than a TikTok dance. People thought hot water opened up your pores and let in bad air, basically inviting the plague in for tea. So instead, they powdered themselves with herbs, stuffed lavender in their sleeves, and hoped nobody noticed. You're starting to yawn now, aren't you? That's the lavender working? Or maybe the realization that your 21st century shower is a miracle. Either way, good for you. Fact 2. Their teeth? Not that bad, but no dentist. Either. Here's a fun one. Contrary to what cartoons might suggest, medieval people didn't have horrifyingly crooked black teeth. Sugar wasn't common, so tooth decay wasn't either. But here's the brutal part. If you did have a toothache, well, there was no dentist. Instead, you'd find your local barber. Not for a haircut, but to yank that bad tooth out with some pliers and a prayer. No anesthesia, no numbing. Just one big pull and maybe a jug of ale. And you thought your last dentist visit was bad. Oddly enough, some even believe that worms cause toothaches. Yes, little toothworms. So treatments included, no joke, burning herbs and blowing the smoke into your mouth to chase the worms out. As your body relaxes deeper under the covers, imagine thanking your modern toothpaste or your lack of smoke-inhaled worm therapy. Fact 3. Beds were a luxury and shared like group projects. Speaking of sleep. Beds, in the Middle Ages, weren't quite the personal paradise they are today. If you were rich, you might have a proper frame, a mattress filled with straw or feathers, and actual sheets. If you were poor, you were sleeping on a bag of straw, on the ground, with your entire family. Yes, the whole family, including grandma, and maybe the neighbor's cousin, or the dog. Privacy? Not a thing. Personal space? Medieval people said, no thanks. People shared beds, not just because of lack of space, but because it was warmer. And remember, central heating didn't exist. So snuggling with 3 other people wasn't just cozy, it was survival. Feel that warm blanket over you right now? That pillow under your head? That personal, peaceful space? Yeah, you're living like royalty. Act 4. Food was weird, and sometimes deadly dinner in the Middle Ages wasn't your standard meat and potatoes deal. It was more like, here's a pie filled with meat, and pears, and raisins. And also, surprise, fish. Medieval people loved mixing sweet and savory. Also, most meats were heavily spiced, not because they were gourmet chefs, but because the meat had often gone bad. Yes, spices covered up the taste of rot, so technically it was dinner and a gamble. And if you were poor, your dinner might just be turnip soup. Again, and again. And maybe one more time just to make sure you never want to see a turnip again. But don't worry, rich people also had it rough. Sometimes their food was too fancy. Bright blue chickens? Check. Roasted peacocks with feathers reattached? Double check. Now, let your eyelids drift just a bit heavier and whisper a quiet thank you to your refrigerator. Welcome back, sleepy traveler, or maybe you never left. Maybe you're drifting between thoughts and dreams, floating somewhere between a medieval village and your cozy blanket. Wherever you are, let's quietly tiptoe into the next part of our story. Fact 5, toilets were creative and horrifying. Let's talk toilets, just for a moment. In the Middle Ages, indoor plumbing was about as real as dragons. But human nature doesn't change. When you've gotta go, you've gotta go. So what did they use? Introducing the garderobe. A lovely little hole in the wall that emptied out straight into a moat, a pit, or sometimes just the street. Yep. In castles, they literally pooped off the side of a stone tower. Gravity did the rest. And in towns, there were chamber pots, bowls people used indoors, especially at night. In the morning, they'd just dump it out the window, from the second floor, with a casual yell of "Gardez-le." Medieval French for watch out for the water. Spoiler alert, it wasn't water. Imagine walking to work in your only pair of shoes and splat. Congratulations, you're now medieval. As gross as this sounds, it was normal, accepted. And if someone didn't empty their pot in the morning, that was the scandal. Take a moment, wiggle your toes under the blanket, whisper a thank you to your flush toilet, and sink just a little deeper into relaxation. Fact 6. Medical advice was questionable. You're coughing, your joints ache, you're in a medieval village. What do? You visit the local healer, probably an old woman who smells like onions and curses in 3 dialects. Or worse, you find the barber surgeon, his tools, a rusty knife, a bucket of leeches, and enough confidence to fill a cathedral. Common treatments included bloodletting, because clearly the problem was too much blood, boiled frog paste for a sore throat, ground up unicorn horn, totally fake, but sold at ridiculous prices, and of course, sitting by a nice fire to balance your humors. There were 4 humors, by the way: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. That was how they diagnosed illness. Not germs, not viruses, just vibes and bile. If you were lucky, you survived. If not, well, Someone probably blamed a witch. Now let your body melt into your mattress. Let the imaginary leeches crawl far away from your dreams, and let yourself fall deeper into calm. Fact 7. Life expectancy was low, but childhood was worse. In the Middle Ages, living to 40 made you a legend. The average life expectancy, around 30 to 35 years, but don't panic. That's mostly because infant and child mortality were tragically high. If you made it past age 10, your odds improved. But getting there wasn't easy. Children were tiny adults, expected to work, obey, and behave. No cartoons, no naps, just chores, farming, or apprenticing under a blacksmith who smelled like iron and onions. Toys existed, but they weren't exactly safe. Think wooden swords, rag dolls, and maybe a ball made of pig bladder. Yep, inflated pig bladder. Don't ask how they discovered that. And yet, they laughed, they played, they survived, sometimes with missing teeth and weird rashes, but they made it. So as you lay there, slowly blinking, heart slowing, mind floating, remind yourself that you've already made it through the hardest part of your day, just like those tiny medieval survivors. And now, you rest. You're still here, still wrapped up in your blankets, breathing slow, eyes a little heavier, and your mind gently pacing through muddy villages, candlelit castles, and the medieval struggle to just stay clean. Let's keep floating. Fact number 8. Fashion was key. Painfully itchy. Ah, medieval fashion. At first glance, long robes, tunics, cloaks. It all looks elegant in paintings, doesn't it? Flowing gowns, noble capes, golden thread. But let me ruin that image for you. Most people wore clothing made from wool. Not soft, modern wool, scratchy, thick, medieval wool. And they wore it in layers, in summer, without deodorant. Because of course deodorant hadn't been invented yet. Underwear was rare, very rare. If you had money, you might own a linen shirt or shift. If not, it was wool against skin, all day long. Also, washing clothes was a hassle. Soap was harsh, often made from lye or animal fat. So people washed their outfits maybe once every several weeks or months. Imagine that. Your shirt's itchy, it's sweaty, it smells like goat cheese, but hey, at least you've got a feather in your hat. And speaking of hats, those were required, especially for women. Married women wore wimples, veils, or something that looked suspiciously like an upside-down ice cream cone. Because showing your hair? Scandalous. As your arms relax and your muscles melt into stillness, try to imagine yourself in a 14th century outfit. Warm, scratchy, probably shared with your cousin. Not exactly pajama material. So, yes. Fact 9. Time was just a suggestion. Right now, you might glance at a digital clock glowing softly on your nightstand. 10:32 p.m. or maybe 2:12 a.m. But imagine a world with no clocks, no alarms, no screen time warnings. In the Middle Ages, people didn't measure time by minutes or seconds. They measured it by light, prayer, and the sound of bells. Monks in monasteries used water clocks or hourglasses to time their daily prayers. In towns, church bells rang to mark the hours. Sort of. Kind of. Morning-ish. Evening-ish. If someone told you to meet at noon, they probably meant when the sun's kinda above us. It wasn't an exact science. And seasons? Oh, you felt those. No calendar apps needed. Just the crunch of frozen mud or the smell of summer sweat. Farmers followed the sky, not a Google calendar. People worked from sunrise to sunset, which, in winter, meant short days and long, dark nights. much like the one you're experiencing now. And in those long, cold nights, they did just what you're doing now. Curled up in straw beds, wrapped in cloaks, whispering stories into the dark, waiting for sleep to come. No clock to wake them, no deadline to chase, just the quiet. Take a breath. Let go of the hours, let go of the schedule. You're not in 2025 anymore. You're in the medieval night now, timeless, silent, still. Welcome back. Or maybe you never left. Maybe you're still drifting somewhere between a medieval market and your warm blanket, listening to old cobblestone streets beneath wooden shoes, and wondering whether that rat in the corner was just unusually large. Or possibly dinner. Let's sink deeper into the details. We're not done with medieval misery or medieval charm just yet. Let's revisit our facts. But this time, we'll open the old wooden door just a little wider. Revisiting. Fact 1. Bathing was suspicious, but also a bit of a party. You remember this one. Bathing? Not exactly popular, but let me add something you didn't hear the first time. Early in the Middle Ages, public bathhouses were actually quite the social scene. Men and women bathed together. Yes, together. There were candles, warm water, drinks. Some even brought music. Sounds romantic, right? Well, hold that thought. Because later, when people started blaming bathhouses for spreading disease, it all changed. By the late Middle Ages, public baths were either shut down or turned into shady, rumor-worthy places. Think of them as the late-night fast food joint of the village. You went in for a rinse, came out with questionable gossip. And yet, for all that, people still tried to stay clean the best they could. They used linen cloths to rub themselves down, kind of like a medieval wet wipe. Minus the wet, minus the wipe. Still better than nothing. Revisiting fact 2. Teeth and the sound of screaming from the barber's hut. You remember the barber surgeon? The multitasking legend of medieval healthcare? Let me tell you how their day usually went. Morning, shave Lord Richard's neck. Noon, pull out old Maud's molar using a fishhook and bad advice. Afternoon, stitch up a knight's leg with horsehair. Evening, treat themselves to a cup of mead and a 5% survival rate. What tools did they use? Not many. Sharp knives, dirty rags, maybe a wooden stick to bite. And yet, people trusted them. Not because they were good, but because there was no one else. Some patients even believed you could heal toothaches by wearing a dead mole around your neck. Yep, a dead mole. Medieval bling with healing powers. So the next time your dentist gives you a free toothbrush, send them a thank you text from the 13th century. Revisiting. Fact 3. Beds were crowded and occasionally haunted. We already said beds were shared, but let's take a closer peek at one of them. Imagine a peasant cottage. Low, wooden ceiling. Smoke from the hearth still hanging in the air. A straw mattress, flat, poking through in places. One blanket. Maybe two, if you were lucky. Now, imagine 4 people sleeping side by side. Maybe a child or two. Maybe grandma. Maybe your cousin Tom, who definitely talks in his sleep. Now add the fact that people believed dreams were spiritual messages. If you had a nightmare, you didn't blame your bedtime stew. You blamed ghosts, or demons, or the neighbor's bad luck rubbing off on you. That's why people slept with amulets under their pillows, or clutched prayer beads, or carved little crosses into the bed frame, just in case. So, if you're lying there tonight, warm and alone, with no cousin Tom whispering about cheese in his sleep, you're doing okay. Side tangent, medieval dreams, a whole thing. Speaking of dreams, people in the Middle Ages took dreams seriously, like, maybe this dream is God telling me to become a blacksmith seriously. There were even dream interpretation books. A lion in your dream? Strength. A fish? Fortune. A naked person running in circles? Possibly too much spiced wine. And monks? They wrote down their dreams in dusty journals. Some claimed they dreamt of angels, others of giant talking cats that warned them about bad crops. You can't make this stuff up. Actually, they probably did. But it helped them make sense of chaos. Life was hard, death was close. Dreams gave them a little mystery, a little hope, and just maybe, a little comfort in the dark. Still here? Of course you are. You've survived medieval bathhouses, tooth extractions, shared straw beds, and peasant night terrors. You deserve a nap. But since you're still with us, let's continue. Tonight, we go beneath the tunic, under the boots, and straight into the steaming pot of medieval dinner disasters. Deep dive, medieval underwear, or the lack of it. Here's a delicate one. What did medieval folks wear under all those layers? What sat beneath the wool, the tunic, the robe, the cloak? For men, something called braise. Imagine loose, drawstring boxer shorts made from linen. Light, breezy, and surprisingly modern looking. Women, however, were a bit more mysterious. Most wore a linen shift, which acted as both underwear and pajamas. That's right. One garment, all purposes. Now here's where it gets brutal. Washing undergarments wasn't frequent. They were washed maybe every few weeks. And remember, these shifts and brays were worn every day. Sweaty, muddy, lice-infested. Yes, lice were a problem. Big enough that some people shaved their heads and wore wigs. Not for fashion, but for pest control. Scratchy, yet sleepy? You're on theme. Deep dive. Shoes that hated you. Imagine waking up and putting on shoes made of thin leather, with no soles, no support, and the structural integrity of a soggy cookie. That was your average medieval shoe. Most were made by hand, shaped like flat boats. Some even had long, curled toes, purely for style. The longer the toe, the more fashionable you were. Some nobles had shoes with toes so long they had to tie them to their knees with ribbon to walk. Fashion hurts, and in this case, trips you down the stairs. For peasants, no frills, just flat leather tied with straps. Wet? Too bad. Muddy? Always. Comfortable? Ha! And socks? If you had any, they were wool. Coarse, itchy wool. Imagine walking miles to the market, uphill both ways, dodging pig droppings, in those shoes. Now wiggle your toes under your blanket. Cozy, right? Your shoes have soles, arch support, maybe even foam. You're practically royalty. Deep dive, dinner, a gamble at best. We already told you medieval food was weird, but let's lean in for a closer sniff. Your host places a bowl in front of you. It's thick, brown, unidentifiable. Pottage, they say with pride. Pottage was a stew of whatever was lying around. Cabbage, barley, beans, sometimes meat, sometimes weeds, sometimes something that used to be meat. Every household had a pottage pot simmering for days. They just kept adding to it. Water, salt, onion, carrot, goat leg, more onion, maybe a pigeon if one flew in through the window. Was it safe? Mostly. Was it edible? Probably. Spices were precious and expensive, but also useful for hiding bad smells. If your stew smelled like cloves and vinegar, It might be to disguise the fact that it was one day away from rebellion. And table manners? You didn't have a fork. Just a spoon, a knife, and your fingers. That's it. Everyone shared from the same bowl. Double dipping, triple dipping, unavoidable. Oh, and plates? If you were poor, you ate off trenchers, stale, flat pieces of bread. When you were done, you could eat the plate, or give it to the dog. As your stomach settles into sleep mode, just know, your leftovers are gourmet compared to this. You're now knee-deep in medieval misery, and we still have layers to peel back. Coming next, why smiling in portraits was taboo, how peasants fought boredom, and what medieval vacation looked like. Spoiler, it involved church and blisters. If you're still gently awake, say, next segment. Or let yourself slip quietly away to a dream where your dinner didn't come with feathers. Whenever you're ready, we'll continue. Still floating? Still curled up beneath your blanket while mud-caked peasants and overly dramatic knights stumble through history beside you? Good. Because now we enter the final stretch of our little medieval dream, where we talk about the things people didn't do, like smiling. Why medieval people rarely smiled in portraits. Let's bust a myth. No, it wasn't just bad dental hygiene that stopped people from smiling in paintings, though the whole teeth like chipped pebbles thing didn't help. The real reason? Smiling just wasn't considered serious. Portraits were expensive, like sell your goat expensive. You'd only get one in your lifetime, maybe two if you were rich and terribly into your own face. So people wanted to look important, noble, stoic. Smiles were associated with foolishness. Court jesters smiled. Drunks smiled. You didn't want to look like you just told a bad joke about turnips for eternity. Even in death portraits, yes, again, they painted people after they died. No one smiled. That would have been deeply unsettling. So instead, you got a blank stare, a fur-lined robe, and maybe a sword awkwardly leaning on your knee. Compare that to today. If someone takes a photo without smiling now, people ask, "Are you okay?" Funny, isn't it? Sleepy eyes blink slower now. Just enough energy to smirk at medieval seriousness before drifting off. What did peasants do for fun? So, you're a peasant. You've spent the day threshing grain, avoiding plague rats, and dodging chamber pots. Now what? Even the poorest folks found time for fun. Medieval fun, but fun. Here's what they got up to. Dancing. Wild, stomping, sweaty group dances. No rhythm required, just joy. Feast days, which were shockingly frequent. They didn't have holidays. They had holy days. And there were a lot. Games. Think dice, stick and ball, or watching someone get hit with a pig bladder tied to a stick. Storytelling. Around fires, in taverns, or while working. Stories were currency. Gossip was gold. Singing terribly. Very common. No one had Spotify. You were the playlist. Evenings were slow. Diamond soins full of low chatter, animal sounds, and the soft clink of wooden cups. A world of boredom, but also peace. Let that stillness enter your room now. The quiet between chores, the hush after sunset. No screens. Just breathe. Just rest. Medieval vacations, if you can call them that. Vacation didn't exist, not the way we know it. There were pilgrimages, though, long journeys to holy places, not for pleasure, but for penance, healing, or to pray away sins. Still, for many it was the only time they left their village. Picture this. You walk 100 miles, through rain, mud, bandit-filled forests. You sleep in barns, eat turnip stew, get blisters. But you reach the shrine, light a candle, whisper a prayer, And somehow, it still feels worth it, because it gave you something rare, a break, a pause in your brutal, beautiful, exhausting life. So next time you're stuck in traffic or waiting for your flight with a $9 bottle of water, remember, you could be barefoot on a dirt road, chasing salvation. Now feel that pillow beneath your head. Feel your breath slow again. No pilgrimage required tonight, just stillness. We're close to the end, traveler, but the sleep is just beginning. If you're still awake, whisper, next segment, or let go. The night is here to keep you safe. We've walked a long road tonight, through muddy streets, crowded beds, itchy clothes, and uncomfortably honest stew. We've peeked into castles, ducked under straw roofs, and even dodged a chamber pot or two. And somehow, even in all that misery, we found humanity. Let's gently wrap it all up, shall we? What the Middle Ages really felt like, forget the Hollywood version. No dragons, no sword fights every 10 minutes, no slow-motion jousts to heroic music. The real Middle Ages? They were quiet and difficult and weird and slow. Most of life was just routine. Wake up, feed the animals, tend the fire, bake the bread, fix the fence, survive the storm, repeat. There was beauty in that rhythm. Even without comfort, people found meaning in family, in land, in faith. In small things, a loaf rising by the hearth, a child's laugh, a dry roof during rain. And in the darkest nights, they did what you're doing now. They told stories, they listened, they let the day dissolve into sleep. The medieval mindset, faith, fear, and finding peace. It's easy to laugh at their beliefs, the leeches, the toothworms, the demon dreams, but you have to understand something. They weren't stupid, they were survivors. They were trying to explain the world with what little they had. If God moved the stars, then he also brought the storm. If dreams had meaning, then pain must have one too. And strangely, this gave them peace they feared much, but they understood rest. They knew what it meant to end the day grateful, to leave the worry for morning, to surrender to sleep, even with danger just outside the door. So tonight, maybe we borrow a little of that. Let the worry wait. Back to you. So here you are, not in a castle, not in a peasant hut, but somewhere quieter, warmer, safer. You've traveled through a brutal time, not with fear, but with calm. And now, your body knows it's time to let go. Your limbs are heavier, your breath is slower, your mind is softer. You don't need to remember all the facts, just the feeling that even in the most uncomfortable times in history, people still found comfort. Even when things were brutal, they still found sleep, just like you're about to. You're still here. Not in mind, maybe, but in body, resting, in breath, slowing, in heart, safe. The story may be over, but the night isn't. So we stay, just a little longer. Not to teach, not to entertain, but to hold the space. For rest. Gentle reflections, no facts. Now, no more facts tonight. No history left to uncover. Just stillness. Let your mind wander, if it needs to a flickering lantern on a stone wall, to a field of tall grass waving in the wind, to a quiet stream beside an old wooden bridge. Nothing is happening there, and that's the point. The world doesn't always need to move. Neither do you. Softening the edges of thought. Notice how your body feels right now. Heavy. Software still. Your toes, relaxed. Your shoulders, melting. Your breath, quieter than before. This is the moment where your thoughts begin to dissolve, one at a time, like footprints in falling snow. Let them go. Let them vanish. Let them sleep. You may notice your hearing blur, my words slipping past, like mist. That's not forgetting. That's your mind doing what it was made to do. To rest, to reset, to let go of the weight of being. Visualize one last scene. If you're still listening, let me give you one last image. You're walking on an old path, stone underfoot, trees overhead. The sky is dusky, the kind of blue that only comes before stars appear. In the distance, there's a cottage, smoke from the chimney, warm light in the windows, a wooden door slightly open. That's your place. You step inside. No one is there, but everything feels like it remembers you. A blanket by the fire, a small table with warm bread, a bed that waits, already made, already warm. You close the door, the wind hushes, and the night wraps around you like a soft cloak. Let go now. You've wandered far enough. There's nothing more to learn, nothing more to think. Only this. You're safe. You're warm. You're home. Good night. Sleep well, time traveler. We'll be here when you wake.